Well, I think the obvious one is authentication. You want to make sure that the student who you think you're assessing actually wrote the essay, and not her brother, and not somebody who did it for pay in another country or something like that. And so, well, we use it at the Basque, and I'm sure you do too, other plagiarism systems that can in many cases can be used to authenticate, to make sure it is the right person who did the work. But what we do, and I think you probably do too, is if we have examinations at the end, and we force people to come to a learning center, testing center. And that's expensive for them because they have to go and travel, especially if you have students in South America or something like that. It's very challenging. And second of all, it's expensive for us to have people there monitoring, to open the door, to make sure they have the right exam and at the right time. And so most distance education institutions around the world now are using many e-assessment, where the assessment is done on a machine, and the student maybe can, some of the better ones or the most sophisticated ones, students do it in their own homes, but you have to make sure that that they're not cheating, or they're not accessing answers on the internet, and so there are a number of companies that sell systems that are designed to make that happen. So every system, people can cheat on it, but I think we have to, in order to our own credibility, we have to make sure as best we can that that the learners are who the learners say. But beyond that, just the more you do authentication like that, the more expensive it becomes, and so that's also a challenge for us. We got to try to keep the grades low. The bigger pedagogical problem with e-assessment is just the things that are easiest to assess, like in multiple choice tests, are the least valuable, because people forget stuff right after the test and they don't use it. So better are project-based learning and creating things, artifacts, putting stuff on the net that students can look at the next year and improve, and have these things made public, so that the accomplishment of the student doesn't get just buried in and thrown away, but rather that they persist. So I think those two, just authentication and doing sort of work that really lasts, or learning. Assessing learning that really lasts is a lot harder, but it's more important than just what they can remember for 3 hours in a final exam.
You see, the e-assessment problem is a huge problem which has not been solved yet. You can do a lot of assessments throughout the teaching learning process, but the question at the end is, who is doing all these assignments and exams? Is it your neighbor, your mother, your daughter, whoever? So in most universities I know there is still no solution, and they ask for the last exam usually to be done face-to-face in a physical center, in which you have to identify yourself and show that it's you that is doing the work. So there are many technical now, I would say, innovations trying to say how you can identify in a far away online setting who is really doing the work, but it's still not resolved. So it's really a problem.
In many ways, I think the challenges for e-assessment are the same as they are in any other learning situation. The heart of the challenge is to figure out, what do you really want students to understand? And what are the criteria for high quality work? Too often, assessment tools focus on little narrow tidbits of information or procedures that are not very clearly connected to ultimately what we want students to understand. So the biggest challenges are thinking hard and well about what do we most want students to understand and be able to do, and how would we define indicators of high quality understanding.
Assessment depends a lot on the environment. A simulation based on an immersive environment is completely different from a text question answer learning situation. So I would like to point the two main things. One, the process of teaching and learning is humanistic, is a humanistic endeavor in which humans interaction are crucial. Even while are you measuring situations and outcomes, there are human bonds to be formed and the context should be taken into account. Second, we are at the very beginning of a new era. We are going to obtain huge amounts of data about people and people's learning. In my view, the main challenge we face is the capacity to manage and to interpret all this data correctly and fairly. I think that never so far assessment data has provided a mirror reflection of real learning. That is, the learning that empowers people to action. What we get at most is a sort of, let's say, cubistic portrait of the learning of a person with omissions, contradictions, and selective truth. We are now going to have much more data, and I'm really skeptical about our capability or capacity to interpret them and to obtain valuable and accurate information from this data. And I am afraid that there is a worldwide trend in which the personalized and non-contextual data is presumed to provide fair judgment and good answers. I think here we are facing a huge problem in the future.
The more authentic a learning activity is, the more personal it is to the individual. She may be analyzing something in her own work or in her own experience and relating it to concepts that she's studying about. So increasing the authenticity of learning experience means that for the instructor or the tutor, assessment becomes more challenging. You do not have a preset yes or no right answer. You have to develop rubrics or guidelines for the sort of criteria you're looking for, which are generic enough to apply to all the different examples that students enter. This takes time. So the big issue that constrains authentic learning activities is the time it takes to evaluate them in a consistent and fair way. I think we should still do it, and there are tricks or strategies that we've evolved that we used in our own work to help manage this time constraint. So it can be managed, maybe not with a massive group of 400 students, but with a smaller group of 40, 50 students. It can be managed in a reasonable way, but requires a lot of thought in what the key parameters are that you're going to be assessing.